My name is Anna. I'm 28 years old, and I'm the responsible daughter, the one who always has her act together. Today was supposed to be a good day. It was my birthday, and after years of grinding as a project manager, paying off my own student loans and just handling my own business, I thought maybe this would be the year they remembered. But the truth is, my phone was completely silent. Instead, I opened Instagram to find pictures of my entire family at a surprise party they threw for my sister Chloe last night. The caption on the photo read, "Celebrating the only one who deserves it." The gut punch of being forgotten, of being erased, left me completely numb. But I had no idea that a single comment my mother was about to leave would expose a betrayal so deep it would ignite a war. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, let me know where you're watching from. And make sure you hit like and subscribe, because what I did next wasn't just about getting even, it was about taking back my life. While my family was busy building a fantasy world around Chloe, I was building an empire in silence. It wasn't something I planned, not really. It was just a byproduct of survival. When you know deep down that there's no safety net, you learn to build your own. For me, that safety net was my career. At the tech firm where I worked, my last name didn't matter. My relationship with my sister didn't matter. The only things that mattered were results. And I delivered results. I became a machine of efficiency and focus, partly because I loved the challenge, but mostly because the office was the only place I didn't feel invisible. It was my sanctuary. While Chloe was taking selfies at brunch, I was leading stand-up meetings with teams of engineers twice my age. While she was complaining about the stress of picking an Instagram filter, I was managing multi-million-dollar project timelines that made grown men sweat. And people noticed. They had to. I remember one particular Tuesday. It was chaos. Our biggest client, a massive e-commerce giant, was threatening to pull a $50 million contract because of a critical flaw in their new software launch. Panic was ricocheting through the office halls. Senior executives were yelling into phones, but I just put my head down. For 72 straight hours, I lived on black coffee and protein bars. I dug through thousands of lines of code, coordinated with our teams in Bangalore and Berlin, and built a recovery roadmap that was aggressive, but achievable. I didn't sleep. I barely blinked. At the final hour, standing in a boardroom that smelled of stale pizza and fear, I presented the solution. I walked them through the fix, step by step, my voice steady, my data undeniable. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then, the client's CEO, a man notorious for his brutal honesty, just nodded. He looked at my boss, David, and said two words. "She fixed it." Later that week, David called me into his corner office. The view of the city skyline from his window was incredible, a constant reminder of the world I was trying to build for myself. He gestured for me to sit down, a rare smile on his face. "Anna," he started, "what you pulled off with the Apex project, that wasn't just good work. That was legendary. You didn't just save the contract, you saved this entire quarter for the company." I just nodded, unsure what to say. Praise still felt foreign to me. He leaned forward, his expression turning more serious. "We've been talking upstairs. There's a new initiative launching, a major expansion. It's going to be based out of our Chicago headquarters. It needs a director. Someone sharp. Someone who doesn't crack under pressure." He let the words hang in the air. "I'm not making any official offers yet, but I want you to think about it. It would be a big step up. A very big step up." Chicago. The word echoed in my mind. It sounded like freedom. It sounded like a new beginning. A place where I was known for who I was, not for who I wasn't. That Friday, as I was wrapping up my week, an email notification popped up on my screen. The subject line was simple: Q3 performance bonus. My heart started to beat a little faster. I knew it was coming, but I had no idea of the scale. My family's perception of my job was that I made good money. They pictured me in a nice little cubicle, earning a comfortable salary that was just enough to pay my bills and maybe take a modest vacation once a year. They thought my Honda Civic was a sign of my financial reality, not a strategic choice to avoid debt. They had no concept of the world I actually operated in. They didn't understand stock options, performance-based compensation, or the kind of numbers that were attached to saving a $50 million deal. I clicked open the email. My eyes scanned past the corporate jargon until they landed on the number. It was right there, in bold black digits. $150,000. I read it again, and again. It felt unreal, like a typo. For a moment, I just stared, the sound of the office fading into a low hum. This wasn't just money. This was a weapon. This was independence. This was my ticket out. My first instinct, the one drilled into me since childhood, was to call my mom and share the news, to finally have an achievement so big they couldn't ignore it. But then, I stopped. I imagined the conversation, the feigned excitement, quickly followed by a casual mention of how Chloe's car needed repairs, or how they were thinking of remodeling the kitchen. I knew, with absolute certainty, that my success would immediately be viewed as a resource for their needs. My victory would become their opportunity. And in that moment, something inside me hardened. No, not this time. This was mine. I quietly opened my personal banking app, the one linked to a high-yield savings account they didn't even know existed. With a few clicks, I transferred the entire amount. $150,000, disappearing into a silent, secure fortress where they could never touch it. I closed the laptop, a strange sense of calm washing over me. They could have their parties. They could celebrate their golden child. They were playing checkers, while I was learning to play chess. And I was about to make my first move. The weeks leading up to my 28th birthday were strange. There was a weird energy coming from my family, a kind of unsettling buzz I couldn't quite put my finger on. It started with a phone call from my mother. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was in the middle of a code review. Usually, her calls were quick, always circling back to some minor crisis Chloe was having. But this one was different. It was almost investigative. She asked about my work schedule for the end of the month, which was unusual. She never cared about my work schedule. "I was just thinking," she said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that always put me on edge. "We haven't had a nice family dinner in ages. I was wondering when you might be free. Maybe that last weekend of the month?" I told her I was flexible, that I could move things around. A little flicker of hope ignited in me. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe they were finally making an effort. But the questions kept coming. She asked if I was planning any trips, if I had anything big going on personally. It felt less like a conversation and more like an interrogation disguised as motherly concern. I hung up the phone with a knot in my stomach. Something felt off. A few days later, my dad called. My dad rarely called me directly unless it was about taxes or some financial document he needed me to sign. His voice was jovial, almost unnaturally so. "Annie girl!" He boomed into the phone. I hated that nickname. "Listen, your mother and I are putting together a little something, a big family surprise, and we were hoping you could pitch in. We're all contributing to make it really special." My mind immediately went to my mother's 60th birthday, which was just a month away. Of course. That explained the secrecy. That explained the planning. A wave of relief washed over me, quieting the unease from my mother's call. This was for Mom. Finally, we were all coming together for something important. "Absolutely, Dad," I said, my voice filled with genuine warmth for the first time in weeks. "How much do you need?" He suggested $500. A steep amount, but for my mom's milestone birthday, it felt right. It felt good to be included, to be part of the we. I transferred the money that same day, marking my calendar for that last weekend, assuming that's when the surprise party for Mom would be. I even started looking online for the perfect gift for her. I was a fool. An absolute, hopeful fool. My 28th birthday began with silence, a profound, echoing silence. I woke up at my usual time, 6:30, but I stayed in bed for a few extra minutes, allowing myself that dangerous little sliver of hope. Maybe there would be a text, maybe a call. I checked my phone, 3 notifications. One from my boss, wishing me a happy birthday and mentioning a card on my desk. One from my best friend from college, who never forgot. And one from my dentist's automated system, reminding me of a cleaning next week. Nothing from them. Not from my mom. Not from my dad. Not from Chloe. I tried to rationalize it. "It's still early on the West Coast," I told myself as I showered. "They're probably just busy." I went to work, throwing myself into my projects, trying to pretend it didn't matter. I was 28, not 8. Birthdays were for kids, but the hollow ache in my chest told a different story. During my lunch break, sitting alone at my desk, I finally gave in to the urge. I opened Instagram. And that's when my world tilted on its axis. The first thing I saw was a post from my cousin, Amber. It was a photo gallery. 27 pictures to be exact. Posted at 11:30 the night before. The caption read, "Surprise party for the one and only Chloe. Family is everything." I clicked through the photos, my hand starting to shake. There was my mother, her face beaming with a kind of pride I hadn't seen directed at me in years, carrying a 3-tiered designer cake. Written in elegant script on the cake were the words, "Chloe is our star. Luck." There was my father, who had claimed he was too swamped with work to visit this month, his arm wrapped tightly around Chloe as she opened a small velvet jewelry box. The look of pure joy on her face as she pulled out a pair of what looked like diamond earrings. There was my Aunt Judith, who lived 3 states away and had missed my college graduation because, in her words, traveling is just too difficult these days. And there, in the background, was the unmistakable setting. My childhood home. The house where I grew up, where my academic awards were once displayed on the mantelpiece before being moved to a drawer to reduce clutter. In their place now hung a massive banner. "We're so proud of you." I kept scrolling, each photo a fresh stab of betrayal. The balloons were in Chloe's favorite color. The table was piled high with expensive-looking gifts. I recognized a gift bag from the Apple Store, the corner of a brand-new MacBook Pro box peeking out. The exact model I had been saving up for, the one I had mentioned wanting just a few weeks ago on a family call. And then I saw the final photo. It was a picture of my mom and Chloe, holding champagne glasses high in a toast. The timestamp was 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before my birthday officially began. The caption, written by my mother, was the final twist of the knife. "Celebrating the only one who deserves it. So proud of our girl for landing her dream job interview. Proud, Shakar family, Shakar's best daughter." An interview. Not a job. An interview. They had thrown a party that must have cost thousands of dollars for an interview. And they had done it on the eve of my birthday, using my money, in my childhood home, without even a thought for me. My sandwich sat forgotten on my desk. The betrayal was so complete, so audacious, it almost didn't feel real. It wasn't that they had forgotten. They had actively chosen to erase me. I somehow managed to get through the rest of the workday on autopilot, the ghost of a smile plastered on my face. When I got home, I couldn't stop myself. I opened Instagram again, my finger scrolling through the images of their perfect celebration. I saw my comment from earlier, the simple, neutral, nice cake. And underneath it, a fresh string of replies had appeared. My aunt wrote, "It was delicious. Belle deserves the best." Then my cousin said, "We missed you, but it was a perfect night for a perfect girl." No one asked why I wasn't there. No one mentioned my birthday. And then, I saw the one from my mother. A direct reply to my comment. 6 words that would detonate the last remaining fragments of my hope. She wrote, "At least someone is worth baking for." I read the words over and over. At least someone is worth baking for. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a thoughtless comment. It was a declaration. A confirmation of what I had felt my entire life. In her eyes, I wasn't worth the effort. I wasn't worth celebrating. Then, as if that wasn't enough, Chloe herself replied. A reply to my comment, for all our family and friends to see. She wrote, "Haha. Sorry, sis. Guess they just love me more. LOL. Maybe next year you'll have something worth celebrating too." The casual cruelty, the gleeful mockery. It stole the air from my lungs. She was taunting me, using our parents' love as a weapon, all while probably still wearing clothes I had helped pay for. And that's when I realized, after all these years of sacrifice, my family hadn't just forgotten me. They had rejected me in the most public and brutal way imaginable. At this point, I don't even know what word to use for what I'm feeling. If you're feeling as outraged as I am right now, help me out and comment one word to describe this family's actions. But instead of breaking down, that rage, it started to transform into a cold, hard strength I never knew I had. For a long time after reading Chloe's comment, I just sat there, on the couch in my quiet, empty apartment. The silence was absolute. I wasn't crying. The tears that had been welling up all day simply vanished, evaporated by the sheer heat of the rage that was now building inside me. It was a strange sensation. The part of me that had spent 28 years craving their approval, the part that would have done anything for a scrap of affection, that part of me just died. It withered and turned to ash right there on my sofa. And in its place, something new and hard and cold began to form. It was a realization, a moment of terrible, liberating clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an oversight. This was who they were. They would never change. They would never see me. They would never value me. And trying to win their love was like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. A pointless, exhausting, soul-crushing exercise. A thought, clear as a bell, echoed in the silence of my mind. It's over. It's finally over. I would not call them. I would not scream or cry or demand an apology. Because an apology from them would be worthless. It would just be another lie, another tool of manipulation to get me back in line. No. This wasn't going to be a messy, emotional confrontation. This was going to be a business transaction. A quiet, methodical, and final severing of ties. The pain was still there, a deep, tectonic ache in my chest. But now it wasn't just pain, it was fuel. I stood up from the couch, not with the slumped shoulders of a victim, but with the straight-backed resolve of a soldier preparing for battle. I walked over to my small desk in the corner of the room, the place where I had built my entire life, away from their influence, and I opened my laptop. The war had begun. My first move was to gather the ammunition. I wasn't just going to make accusations. I was going to present evidence. Cold, hard, undeniable proof. I created a new folder on my desktop and named it, simply, The File. The first thing I dragged into it was the screenshots, crystal clear images of the Instagram posts, the photos of the party, the banner, the cake, the captions, and most importantly, the comments. My mother's 6 brutal words and Chloe's gleeful mockery. I saved each one as a separate file, documenting the public nature of my humiliation. Next, I went through my text messages, scrolling back months, then years. Every pathetic, pleading text from Chloe appeared on my screen. "Hey Annie, can you help me out with my car payment this month? I'm so broke. OMG, my electricity is gonna get shut off. Can you send me like $200? I'll pay you back, I swear." Don't tell mom and dad, they'll just worry. Lie after lie after lie. I screenshotted every single one, every empty promise to pay me back, every manipulative plea. Then I opened my banking app. I went through my transaction history, painstakingly searching for every transfer I had ever made to Chloe or directly to her landlord. The small amounts, the big amounts, the emergency funds. I exported the statements, highlighting each transaction with a digital red marker. The numbers started to add up, and the total made my stomach churn. Finally, I logged into my personal email and searched for a specific message I had saved, a message I had almost forgotten about. Months ago, I had helped Chloe set up her professional email account because, of course, she didn't know how. For a brief period, her work emails were forwarded to my inbox, a setting she never bothered to change. I found what I was looking for: an email from the manager of the art gallery where she supposedly worked. It wasn't a promotional offer. It was a termination notice. Dated 3 months ago. It cited chronic tardiness, a negative attitude with clients, and a complete lack of reliability. 3 months. She had been lying to all of us for 3 months, playing the part of the struggling artist while living off my money. I saved the email as a PDF. The case was airtight. I compiled everything into a single, multi-page document: the screenshots, the texts, the bank statements, the termination letter. It was a damning testament to her deception and their willful ignorance. It was the truth, organized and weaponized. With the evidence gathered, it was time to cut the supply lines. I logged back into my bank account, my fingers moving with a steady, determined rhythm. I navigated to the automatic payments section. There it was, a recurring transfer scheduled for the first of every month. $800 sent directly to Belle's property management company. A payment I had set up 2 years ago to prevent her from being evicted when she was 3 months behind on rent. It was a financial lifeline she had come to take for granted, a safety net she didn't even have to ask for anymore. I looked at the entry for a long moment. It represented so much more than just money. It represented my misplaced sense of duty, my years of enabling her, my silent acceptance of the role they had given me. With a single, satisfying click, I hit the cancel button. A confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment?" I clicked yes without a flicker of hesitation. A small line of text appeared. "Your recurring payment has been successfully canceled." It was done. The financial artery was severed. She was on her own. The final step was the most important. It was the move that would change everything, the point of no return. I opened my work email, my heart pounding now, not with fear, but with a thrilling sense of anticipation. I searched for the email from my boss, David, the one about the director position in Chicago. I read his words again. A big step up. Someone who doesn't crack under pressure. He had no idea. I clicked reply. For years, my life had been defined by their needs, their drama, their expectations. My own dreams, my own ambitions, were always secondary, something to be pursued later, after Chloe was settled, after my parents were happy. But later was never going to come. I had to take it for myself. My fingers flew across the keyboard. "David," I wrote, "thank you again for considering me for the director position in Chicago. After careful thought, I would be honored to accept. Please let me know what the next steps are. I am ready to begin this new chapter as soon as possible." Best, Anna. I stared at the word, accept. It was such a small word, but it held the weight of my entire future. It was me, finally choosing myself. I took a deep breath, and I hit send. A wave of pure, unadulterated relief washed over me, so powerful it almost made me dizzy. The die was cast. The bridges were burned. I didn't know what would happen next, what kind of storm was about to break. But for the first time in my entire life, I felt completely and utterly free. I closed my laptop. My apartment was quiet again, but this time, the silence wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. It was the silence of a chessboard, right after a game-winning move had been made. And now, all I had to do was wait for them to realize they had been checkmated. The storm broke 4 days after my birthday. It was a Thursday evening. I had just gotten home from work, changed into sweatpants, and was about to heat some leftovers when my doorbell rang. Not the buzzer from downstairs, but a hard, insistent knocking directly on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart gave a little jolt. I looked through the peephole, and there they were. All three of them. My father, Richard, stood in the center, his face a mask of stern disappointment. My mother, Karen, was beside him, her arms crossed, radiating righteous indignation. And behind them, peeking out from behind my father's shoulder, was Chloe, her face streaked with tears, looking for all the world like a tragic victim. This was it. The ambush. They had come to my home, my sanctuary, to put me back in my place. I took a deep breath, the cold resolve from the past few days settling over me like a suit of armor. I turned the deadbolt, opened the door, and stood there, blocking the entrance. "Yes?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of any emotion. Chloe immediately burst into a fresh round of sobs. "Anna, you have to fix this," she wailed, dabbing at her eyes. "The landlord just called me. He said the rent wasn't paid. He's talking about eviction proceedings." My mother pushed past my father, her eyes narrowed into slits. "This has gone far enough, Anna," she snapped. "This childish little tantrum of yours is going to make your sister homeless. Do you understand that? Homeless. All because you were feeling a little jealous about a party." My father, ever the patriarch, stepped forward to deliver what he clearly thought was the final word. "We are going inside to discuss this like a family," he said, not as a request, but as a command. "You are going to apologize to your sister. You are going to call her landlord and reinstate the payments immediately, and this nonsense will end tonight." They fully expected me to crumble, to wither under their united front of guilt, shame, and authority. They had played this scene 100 times before in 100 different ways, and I had always, eventually, folded. But they weren't dealing with the old Anna anymore. I held my ground for a moment longer, then gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod and stepped aside. "Fine," I said. "Come in." They filed into my small living room, their presence immediately making the space feel cramped and suffocating. Chloe threw herself dramatically onto my couch, resuming her performance of a heartbroken damsel in distress. My mother began pacing back and forth in front of the window like a caged tiger, while my father stood in the middle of the room, assuming the role of judge, jury, and executioner. "All right," he began, his voice booming with authority. "Let's hear it. What is your explanation for this cruel and irresponsible behavior?" I remained standing by the door, my arms crossed. I let them talk. I let them perform their well-rehearsed play. My mother went first, launching into a tirade about family loyalty, about how I was always so sensitive and dramatic, how Chloe was going through a tough time and needed our support, not our judgment. Chloe chimed in between sobs, talking about how stressed she was, how hard it was to find creative work, how she couldn't believe her own sister would betray her like this. It was a masterful performance, A symphony of manipulation and victimhood. I listened to it all, my face a perfect, unreadable mask. My silence seemed to unnerve them. It wasn't part of their script. I was supposed to be defensive, tearful, apologetic. My calm was a foreign language they couldn't comprehend. Finally, when they seemed to have run out of steam, my father turned to me, his expression softening into one of condescending pity. "Look, Anna," he said, "we understand you're upset about your birthday. We dropped the ball. We're sorry. But this reaction is completely out of proportion. It's time to be the bigger person." And that was my cue, the moment I had been waiting for. "You're right," I said, my voice cutting through the thick, emotional air of the room. "It's not about the party." I walked over to my desk, picked up my laptop, and walked back to the center of the room. "It's about this." I turned the screen towards them. On it was the spreadsheet I had created, the one meticulously detailing every single dollar I had ever sent Chloe. And at the bottom, in large, bold font, was the total: $17,842. "This," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, "is why the rent wasn't paid. Because I have permanently stopped funding the lifestyle of a liar." I clicked to the next tab, bringing up the PDF of her termination letter. "And I call her a liar because she wasn't fired last week. Or last month. She was fired 3 months ago for being unreliable and unprofessional. She's been unemployed this whole time, while taking my money and crying to you about how stressful her job is." The silence in the room was deafening. Chloe's crying stopped instantly, her face frozen in a mask of pure shock and horror. My father stared at the screen, his mouth slightly agape, the color draining from his face. But my mother recovered first. A scowl spread across her lips. "Don't you dare try to villainize your sister," she hissed. "It is your responsibility to help your family. You are the fortunate one. You are the stable one. It is your duty to lift her." I almost laughed. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. My eyes drifted down to Chloe, who was sitting frozen on the couch. And I saw it. The second piece of evidence. Hanging around her neck was the delicate gold heart necklace, the one I had saved up for 6 months to buy for my mother's 50th birthday. I raised my hand and pointed, my finger trembling slightly. "Is that my duty too, Mom?" I asked, my voice laced with ice. "To see the most meaningful gift I ever gave you, a gift I paid for by working double shifts in college, handed down to her like some cheap trinket to make her feel better after a bad day?" My mother's face flushed a deep, ugly red. For the first time, she had no answer. She just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. My father, seeing my mother falter, stepped back into the breach, trying to regain control. He switched tactics from anger to feigned concern. "Anna, listen to yourself," he said, his voice soft and placating. "You're clearly overwrought. You're making rash decisions. This talk about Chicago. It's insane. You can't just uproot your entire life because of a little family drama." And there it was. The final piece of the puzzle, the ultimate betrayal, they thought I would never uncover. I turned my gaze from my mother to my father, and I let a slow, cold smile spread across my face. "You know, you're right," I said. "It is insane. What's truly insane is that this is the first major career opportunity I've had that Mom didn't get a chance to sabotage behind my back." My father's eyes widened. He knew. "What are you talking about?" he asked, but his voice lacked conviction. He knew exactly what I was talking about. "I'm talking about San Francisco," I said, letting each word land like a hammer blow. "Last year, the senior analyst position, the recruiter who called this house was looking for me. The one Mom told that I wasn't interested in relocating. That I was very settled here. The phone call she never, ever told me about." I looked directly at my mother, who was now as pale as a ghost. You didn't just ignore my career, Mom. You actively worked against it. You stole a future from me just to keep me here, to keep me trapped in my role as the family ATM. So you could keep propping her up? I gestured towards Chloe, who now just looked small and pathetic on my couch. The full scope of their deception, their lifelong campaign of emotional and financial abuse, was finally laid bare in the harsh light of my living room. There was nothing left to say. There were no more excuses they could make. The game was over. So, no, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper but carrying more power than any shout. I will not be reinstating the rent. I will not be apologizing. The bank is closed. The safety net has been cut. I walked to my front door and opened it wide. I am moving to Chicago in 3 weeks. I looked at each of them, one by one, meeting their shocked, horrified gazes without flinching. And now, I said, my voice ringing with the finality of a death sentence, I need you to get out of my house. For a few seconds after I told them to leave, nobody moved. It was like a scene frozen in time. The three of them just stood there, staring at me as if I had suddenly started speaking a foreign language. The shock on their faces was absolute. It wasn't just a surprise. It was a fundamental breakdown of their entire worldview. The dependable daughter, the quiet one, the emotional and financial bedrock of their dysfunctional little kingdom, had just declared independence. It was a reality they were simply not equipped to process. My father was the first to find his voice, but it was weak, uncertain. Anna, what are you talking about? He stammered. This is a joke, right? This isn't funny. I didn't say a word. I just kept my eyes fixed on him, my expression unchanging. The lack of a response, the absence of the emotional reaction he was expecting, seemed to frighten him more than anything I could have said. Then, the panic set in. It started with Chloe. The realization of what "the bank is closed" actually meant finally crashed down on her. It wasn't an abstract concept anymore. It was real. It was imminent. Eviction, she whispered, the word barely audible. Then her voice rose to a hysterical shriek. I'm going to be evicted! I'm going to be homeless! I'll have nowhere to go! She turned to my mother, her face a mess of tears and mascara. Mommy, do something. You can't let her do this to me. That was all it took to snap my mother out of her shock and into her primary role, Chloe's fierce, irrational protector. Her face contorted with rage, a deep, primal fury. You, she snarled, pointing a trembling finger at me. You did this. You ungrateful, selfish child. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By destroying your sister's life? By tearing this family apart? I still didn't speak. I just held the door open, my silence a wall she couldn't break through. Her inability to provoke a reaction from me, to draw me into the old, familiar cycle of screaming and crying, was making her unravel. You have always been jealous of her, she screamed, her voice cracking. Always. You couldn't stand that she was the pretty one, the popular one. You couldn't stand that she had a light that you never did. So you plotted this whole time, just waiting for a chance to ruin her. The accusations were so ludicrous, so detached from reality, that they held no power over me anymore. They were just noise. The desperate, flailing death rattle of a tyrant who had lost control. My father finally seemed to grasp the finality of the situation. He grabbed my mother's arm. Karen, stop, he said, his voice strained. We're leaving. He pulled her towards the door, with Chloe stumbling blindly after them, her sobs echoing in the hallway. Just before he stepped out, my father turned back to look at me one last time. There was no anger in his eyes, just a look of profound confusion and defeat. I don't understand, Anna, he said quietly. I don't understand. Then he was gone. I closed the door, turned the deadbolt, and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. The confrontation was over. The fallout was just beginning. I knew they wouldn't just leave it at that. Their entire system of codependency relied on my participation, and they would fight tooth and nail to drag me back in. 5 minutes after they left, my phone, which I had placed on the kitchen counter, began to buzz, and it didn't stop. It was a relentless, sustained assault. The screen lit up with call after call, text after text, notification after notification. It was like a digital siege. I walked over and picked it up, my hand steady. 37 missed calls, 12 from my mother, 15 from Chloe, 10 from my father. And the texts. The texts were a masterclass in manipulation, each one designed to hit a different pressure point. Chloe's messages were a chaotic mix of pure panic and vicious blame. The first one read, "The landlord says I have 72 hours. 72 hours. What am I supposed to do?" This was followed moments later by, "You are a monster. I hope you're happy. When I'm sleeping on the street, it will be your fault. I will make sure everyone knows what you did to me." Then came the attempts at guilt. "I can't believe my own sister, my blood, would do this. I always looked up to you." A lie so blatant it was almost laughable. My mother's tactics were more calculated, more insidious. She started with threats veiled as concern. An email arrived, with the subject line, "An urgent family matter." In it, she wrote about how my erratic behavior was causing her immense emotional distress and sleepless nights. She talked about how my father's blood pressure was skyrocketing because of the stress I had caused. She was trying to make me responsible not just for Chloe's problems, but for their health and well-being. It was a classic move, one she had used on me my entire life. When the guilt trip didn't get an immediate response, she pivoted to outright rage and character assassination. Another email, this one a long, rambling manifesto, accused me of being a cold, calculating narcissist who had never truly loved any of them. "You think your money makes you better than us," she wrote, "but it has only made you cruel. You have torn the heart out of this family, and I don't know if I can ever forgive you." The irony of her accusing me of being obsessed with money was not lost on me. And then, there was my father. His approach was perhaps the most dangerous because it was cloaked in the guise of reason and regret. He left a voicemail. His voice, usually so booming and confident, was soft, almost broken. "Annie girl," he began, the hated nickname now sounding pathetic. "Listen, maybe I haven't been, maybe we haven't been the best parents to you. Maybe we've taken you for granted. I see that now. But this isn't the way to fix it. Cutting us off? Cutting your sister off? It's an extreme reaction, a decision made in anger. Please, just call me. We can talk about this. We can compromise. Don't throw away your family, kiddo. Don't make a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life." It was the closest he had ever come to an apology, and the old me, the me from a week ago, would have shattered. I would have been flooded with guilt, desperate to believe his words, desperate to fix the pain in his voice. But the new me heard the manipulation beneath the regret. He wasn't sorry for what they had done. He was sorry for the consequences. He wasn't offering to change. He was offering a compromise that would inevitably involve me sacrificing myself once again for their comfort. He was trying to bargain with my pain, to negotiate the terms of my surrender. I listened to the voicemail twice. Then I deleted it. I looked at the dozens of notifications still flashing on my screen, a chorus of digital screams demanding my attention, my compliance, my money. And with a strange sense of calm, I pressed and held the power button on the side of my phone. A slider appeared on the screen. "Slide to power off." I slid my finger across the glass. The screen went black. The siege was over. The silence was back. And this time, it was my choice. It was the sound of my freedom. 27 coin nines use arrow. Up and arrow down to select a turn, enter to jump to it, and escape to return to the chat. I kept my phone off for 48 hours, 2 full days of complete blissful radio silence. It was the most peaceful 72 hours of my adult life. I ordered takeout, binge-watched a show I'd been meaning to see, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't have a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I wasn't waiting for the next crisis, the next demand, the next passive-aggressive comment. I was just living. But I knew the silence couldn't last forever. I wasn't just going to disappear. That wasn't the plan. The plan was to set new terms. My terms. On Sunday morning, I powered my phone back on. The avalanche of notifications was immediate and overwhelming, but this time I looked at them not with dread, but with the detached focus of a strategist. I ignored the hundreds of texts and voicemails. Instead, I opened a fresh email. I addressed it to my mother, my father, and Chloe. I also CC'd a new contact. Arthur Vance, Esquiers, my lawyer. I had found him through my company's legal assistance program, a quiet, no-nonsense man who specialized in harassment and domestic disputes. The email I composed was short, professional, and brutally clear. It had 3 bullet points. 1. This email serves as my final and official notification that all forms of financial support from me to any member of this family have been permanently terminated. This decision is non-negotiable. 2. My decision to accept a new position and relocate to Chicago is final. My last day in the state will be in 3 weeks' time. I will not be sharing my new address or personal contact information. 3. Any further attempts to contact me at my place of work, to show up at my residence unannounced, or any form of harassment directed at me or my colleagues will be considered a direct violation of my request for privacy. All such incidents will be documented and forwarded to my legal counsel, Mr. Vance, for immediate action. I read it over once. It was cold. It was clinical. It was perfect. I hit send. Then, one by one, I went into my contacts and blocked their numbers. My mother. Blocked. My father. Blocked. Chloe. Blocked. My Aunt Judith. My Uncle Pete. Anyone who had participated in their campaign. Blocked. 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 With each tap of the screen, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. It was a digital exorcism. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just reacting to their drama. I was proactively building a wall to protect my peace. This was a moment of incredible power. For the first time, she wasn't backing down. She chose herself over their expectations. If you support this powerful decision, drop a flexed bicep emoji in the comments to send her some strength for the journey ahead. Just as I was putting my phone down, it rang. An unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. Anna? It's David. It was my boss. Hey, sorry to bother you on a Sunday, he said, his voice warm and professional. But I got your email accepting the Chicago position. We are all thrilled. But I also got a call from HR this morning. It seems your mother tried to call the main office line about a dozen times yesterday, demanding to speak with me about your unstable condition. I just wanted to check in and make sure everything is okay. A surge of humiliation washed over me, quickly followed by gratitude. I explained, vaguely, that I was dealing with a difficult family situation and that I had just set some firm boundaries. David didn't pry. He just listened. I understand, he said. And for what it's worth, the company has your back. I've already spoken with building security. They have a photo and have been instructed not to allow her on the premises. Your well-being is our top priority. We'll handle any distractions. You just focus on getting ready for Chicago. We're lucky to have you. I was so taken aback by the simple, unconditional support that I was momentarily speechless. Thank you, David. I finally managed to say. That, that means a lot. He had offered me more genuine care and protection in a 2-minute phone call than my own family had in 28 years. An hour later, there was a knock on my door. My body tensed instantly, my mind flashing back to the ambush a few nights before. But when I looked through the peephole, I saw a familiar, friendly face. It was Sarah, my best friend from college. She was holding a giant catering box from my favorite barbecue place and a 12-pack of craft beer. I opened the door and she just stood there, a wry smile on her face. "Your social media has been eventful," she said dryly. "Figured you could use some reinforcements." I felt a laugh bubble up, a real, genuine laugh. It felt like breaking the surface of the water after being held under for too long. She walked in, kicked the door shut behind her, and set the food down on my coffee table. She didn't bombard me with questions. She didn't ask for every salacious detail. She just opened 2 beers, handed one to me, and sat down on the couch next to me. "I don't need to know everything," she said, taking a long sip. "I just need to know one thing. Are you okay?" And hearing that simple question, asked with so much genuine concern, the dam finally broke. I told her everything. The party, the comments, the lies, the stolen necklace, the sabotaged job offer, the confrontation, everything. I talked for over an hour, the words pouring out of me in a torrent of pent-up pain and rage, and she just listened. She nodded. She swore under her breath at all the right parts. She didn't offer cheap advice or empty platitudes. She just held space for my story. When I finally finished, exhausted and emotionally drained, she just looked at me, her eyes full of a fierce, protective loyalty. "Good," she said simply. "It's about damn time." In that moment, surrounded by the smell of smoked brisket and the quiet solidarity of a true friend, I understood the meaning of a concept that had always been foreign to me: a chosen family. The people who show up not because they're obligated by blood, but because they choose to. The boss who protects you, the friend who brings you food, the people who see your worth when your own family refuses to. They were my real safety net. And with their support, I knew I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to thrive. 6 months later, I'm standing on the balcony of my apartment in Chicago, watching the city lights flicker to life as the sun sets over Lake Michigan. The air is crisp and cool, and for the first time, it feels like home. Life is different now. It's quiet. It's peaceful. As the new director of strategic expansion, my days are challenging and fulfilling. I lead a team of brilliant people who respect my ideas and value my contributions. I've made new friends, people who know me as Anna, the leader and the friend, not Anna, the forgotten daughter and the family ATM. This life, this view, this feeling of calm. I built this, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I still hear things, of course. My cousin Amber, the one who posted the original party photos but later reached out to apologize, keeps me updated in small doses. The house I grew up in was sold a few months ago. My parents had to downsize to a small condo an hour outside the city. Without my unspoken financial contributions propping them up, their lavish lifestyle became unsustainable. Chloe, well, Chloe had the rudest awakening of all. She was evicted just as she feared. After couch surfing for a few weeks, reality finally hit her. According to Amber, she now has 2 roommates in a tiny apartment and works double shifts at a restaurant to make rent. For the first time in her life, she's being forced to stand on her own 2 feet. There's a part of me that feels a twinge of something. Not pity, exactly, but a sad acknowledgement of the potential she wasted. They didn't just fail me. They failed her too, by cushioning her from the world for so long. 2 weeks ago, something unexpected happened. An email appeared in my inbox. The sender was Chloe. My finger hovered over the delete button, but something made me open it. The message was short. There were no excuses, no blame, no demands. It just said, "Hi, Anna. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, and I'm not. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. For the money, for the party, for just being a terrible sister. You were right to cut me off. I think maybe I needed it to finally grow up. I hope you're happy in Chicago." I read it 3 times. It was the first honest communication I had ever received from her. It was an apology, yes, but more than that, it was an acknowledgement, an admission of the truth. I thought about it for a day before I replied. My response was just as short. "I'm glad to hear you're doing okay, Chloe. Take care of yourself." The door to reconciliation isn't completely closed, but it's no longer wide open. It's on my terms now. I'm the one who decides if and when it ever opens again. Standing here now, looking out at the endless city, I've learned a few things. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their own actions. I've learned that blood may make you related, but it doesn't automatically make you family. Family is the people who show up, the ones who protect you, respect you, and celebrate you, not for what you can do for them, but for who you are. And most importantly, I've learned that your value isn't determined by the people who refuse to see it. It's something you define for yourself. For 28 years, I fought for a seat at a table where I was never truly welcome. Now, I've built my own. And the view from here is incredible. This journey has been one of the hardest of my life, but it led me to a place of peace I never thought was possible. So now I want to ask you, have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family members who took you for granted? How did you navigate those difficult, painful conversations? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice and reclaiming your power. Thank you for listening.